guys, it's me again. I'm going to finish my book, Rosa Parks. 300 subscribers and 300 thumbs up. And yeah, let's get going. So, we're on this page. Jim Crow laws. In the southern United States from 1876 to 1965, Jim Crow laws kept separation of blacks and whites. In public facilities, blacks could not buy houses in white neighborhoods or eat at the same restaurants as white people. They even had to bring their clothes to all black laundromats. The term Jim Crow probably comes from the minstrel shows of the late 1800s. White men would wear black face makeup and make fun of African Americans. Jim Crow was the name of a character in minstrel show skits. Even so, Rosa did not mistrust all white people. There was an old white woman in Pine Level who used to be her bass fishing. This woman was kind and polite to Rosa and her grandparents. She treated them as equals. There was a white soldier who always patted her on the head whenever he came through town. Even a small gesture like this was unusual. As she grew older, Rosa began to pity the whites who called her names or threw rocks at her. She wanted to forgive, not hate, people who insulted her. Much of the time, Rosa was happy in Pine Level. She loved school. She couldn't wait for each day to begin. She enjoyed Mother Goose nursery rhymes, playing hide and seek with her friends, and looking after her younger brother. She liked to explore the woods, creeks, and ponds near the farm, but she was always careful to avoid poisonous snakes. For extra pocket money, she sold eggs to the neighbors. Sometimes she wandered into the local cemetery. Some of the tombstones dated back to the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War in 1865, slavery ended. From then on, it was against the law for a person to own another person. Some of Rosa's grandparents had been slaves. Now, even though they were poor and often mistreated, Rosa's family was free. Brown versus Board of Education. As a black child living in the South, Rosa Parks could not attend school with white children. Then, in 1954, a group of black parents in Topeka, Kansas went to court to end school segregation. Their case is one of the most famous ever to become the Supreme Court. The black parents were upset because the all-black school was over a mile away from their neighborhood. It was a long trip for young children. The all-white elementary school was very close by. It was unfair that their children could not go there. Up to this point, the law said public schools can stay segregated as long as the black schools were as good as the white schools. But now the judges on the Supreme Court changed the law. From here on, and separate schools for black children and white children were illegal. Public schools had to be integrated. Black children could go to any public school they wished. Chapter 2, City Lights. In 1924, when Rosa was 11, her mother sent her to live with her relatives in Montgomery, the Alabama state capital, so she could go to a better school. It was called the Montgomery Industrial School for Girls. The school had been started by white Northerners to help poor black girls. There were 250 to 300 schools. All the teachers were white women from the North. The head of the school, Alice White, was both strict and loving. She expected a lot from her girls. Rosa adored her. From Miss White, Rosa learned to respect herself. She would not set law goals for herself just because she was black. Rosa was excited to be in Montgomery. To her, it seemed like a big modern city. Early cars, Model Ts, crowded the streets. There were fine shops filled with fancy dresses, hats, and gloves. A football stadium seated 12,000 people. Trains on the Louisville and Nashville railroad lines came charging into Union Station, and riverboats brought their cargo of pine and cotton to the wharf. But in some ways, Montgomery was just like Pine Level. One day, Rosa was walking through a white neighborhood. A white boy on roller skates sped by and slammed into her. She was trying to shove herself off the sideway. She turned and pushed him back. The boy's mother was standing nearby. She told Rosa that she could be put in jail for what she had done. Forever in Rosa Parks. My story, Rosa Letter wrote. So I told her that he pushed me and that I didn't want to be pushed, seeing that I wasn't bothering him at all. She wanted to stand up for herself and she did. Rosa spent 4 years at Miss White's school. Many whites in Montgomery resented Miss White and other teachers. What business did they have teaching black children? Why didn't they just stay up north, where they were from? Twice, the school was set on fire. In 1928, it was forced to close. Miss White went back home to Massachusetts. However, she stayed in touch with Rosa, who considered her a loving teacher and dear friend. After that, Rosa attended another all-black school. She was hoping to become a teacher, like her mother. Then her grandma got sick. Rosa, who was 16, dropped out of school and moved back to Pine Level to help care for her. After her grandmother died, Rosa's mother became ill. Again, Rosa was there to help. She was not happy about leaving school, but she did not complain. To make money, she cleaned houses for white people. Sometimes that wasn't enough, so she'd stand on the street selling fruit. Rosa worked hard. She also belonged to St. Paul AM Church. AM stands for African Methodist Episcopal. The church was the oldest black neighborhood in Montgomery. It was the center of Rosa's life and brought her great joy. Her strong faith helped her get through her tiring days. The role of the black church. The first black churches were formed before 1800s by free blacks in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Petersburg, Virginia, and Savannah, Georgia. The churches began because blacks were not welcome at many white churches. In their own churches, blacks developed a brand of Christianity that drew on African spiritual customs. The churches became centers of their communities. The churches founded schools and helped the poor and those in Pearson. In the 1960s, the churches were a very important part of civil rights movement. The ministers became civil rights leaders. Martin Luther King Jr. was a minister. So was Jesse Jackson. So I'm going to stop there. I really like this book. This is a really nice book. Oh, let me read this last part. The church taught her not to complain or rebel. Instead, she was place her faith in God. God would take care of her. God will provide. But then she met a bright young man named Raymond Parks. Raymond had a lot of different ideas. So that's really interesting. And we will read that next time. Thank you for watching my video. Bye.